Revealed, the incredible choice of a rancher who transformed a widow's life in an unexpected twist. Tom stood in the blistering sun, sweat dripping down his brow as he loaded bales of hay onto the back of his truck. The familiar landscape of West Texas stretched out before him, a vast expanse that had once grounded him in purpose. Yet, as he secured the last bale, he felt an unfamiliar emptiness clawing at his insides. At 42, his rugged exterior masked a heart burdened by the aftermath of a divorce that had stripped him of not only his companion but also a sense of belonging. His hands trembled slightly when he thought of Lucy, a widow barely holding her family and her husband's dream together. He told himself to move on, but something in her fierce determination beckoned to him, a promise of connection he longed for, yet feared to reach. Driving in the dirt road, his thoughts started spiraling. The barn on Lucy's land was crumbling, and her 2 children played nearby, their laughter juxtaposed with the gravity of her reality. He shook his head, gritting his teeth to silence the whispering doubts. Was he really considering helping? To dive deeper into a life fraught with heartbreak? The familiar pressure in his chest surged at the thought of investing his heart again, frightened of the vulnerability that would follow. But isn't that what he had advocated since childhood? The importance of neighborly support, standing together amidst hardship? Breath caught in his throat. He steadied himself on the steering wheel, hesitating. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. An involuntary shiver coursed through him as he pulled up to Lucy's dilapidated farm. Seeing her there, muscles taut against the relentless sun, dirt smeared against her cheeks but her spirit unyielded, swallowed his fears momentarily. She waved, welcoming yet hesitant. That flickering hope stirring in her eyes mirrored a glimmer within him. But could he truly take on her burdens? As they exchanged words about livestock and crop yields, Tom felt the dual weight of obligation and interest pressing down on him, increasing with every laugh they shared. His convictions pitted against the nagging fear of getting too close. The town looked on, whispers gossiping about the widow and the rancher. Tom knew those judgmental glances were not kind, breeding skepticism, questioning his intentions and his worth. The community he had once felt integral to now seemed foreign, rife with silent critique, sharpening the edges of his internal conflict. Anxiety seeped deeper into his mind. What if he poured time and energy into Lucy's plights only to have it backfire? He could lose his own ranch, the only constant in a life riddled with change. As dusk fell, swallowing the land in shadows, unease brewed a storm within him. Tom stood at a crossroads, knowing full well that the corporate giant would soon come knocking, threatening to strip him of everything he held dear, his life, his purpose, perhaps even any chance of a bond he cherished with Lucy. The choice loomed before him like a vast Texas storm, and when it broke, would it wash the hope of a future away? Fear and determination warred within him, an anguished heart struggling to discern duty from desire, wondering if this alliance with a grieving mother could resurrect a hollow heart once more. Tom stood beside his truck, the weight of the world pressing down on him. He was at a tipping point, caught between self-preservation and the compelling pull of compassion. Lucy's situation hung in the air like the last light of day, hinting at both opportunity and peril. Each glance into her resilient eyes deepened his internal struggle, awakening something he hadn't acknowledged, the creeping fear of connection marred by unhealed scars. As night fell, he turned his thoughts inward, battling memories that clawed at him. Images of laughter now hauntingly juxtaposed with Lucy's shared pain confronted him. His fingers brushed over the rough wood of the truck bed. This was no mere act of charity. It was a commitment, a possible alliance that could either mend two broken lives or irrevocably fracture his own. The skepticism of others seeped into his mind like poison, their veiled whispers echoing the doubts he harbored about himself. He had been hurt before. Diving back into caring for someone else's brokenness threatened to unravel him further. Yet the door to change creaked open with a tempting whisper of hope. Could this be a chance not only for Lucy but also for him? The prospect gnawed at him as he thought about his ranch, stagnant under the weight of his sadness, needing a spark of inspiration to rejuvenate it. Maybe supporting Lucy would reignite a fire within him, unleashing dormant energy he thought he lost with his marriage. Determined, he drove home, mind swirling with plans. He sketched ideas in his mind, fixing the barn, sharing resources, and perhaps instilling a sense of partnership that both he and Lucy craved. The thought of tangible work, the grit and grind of labor to cultivate a life, felt liberating. As he pulled into his ranch, the familiar creaks and shattering silence enveloped him in loneliness, but they also held an undeniable challenge. Could he rise to meet it? That night he scribbled notes, each word a step closer to commitment. What had once been a wild dream became a clear vision, a community of support, a chance to rebuild trust in himself alongside those whose lives intertwine with his. Despite this newfound clarity, doubt lingered in the corners of his mind, a dark shadow shifting with every thought about Lucy. What would happen if he failed her? Would her trust cause him to confront more than he bargained for? Days passed, filled with the rhythm of ranch work, yet thoughts of Lucy consumed his downtime. Every time he passed her land, he felt an irresistible gravity pulling him closer. The children's laughter melted his worries temporarily, but the childish joy was not enough to shield him from the decision he had to make. He teetered between fear of the unknown and the possibility of forging a new bond, one that promised warmth but threatened to expose his vulnerabilities. One evening, he parked outside her property, contemplating his next move. Should he approach her tonight? Share his intentions? His readiness to help? Or would that escalate the situation, leading to uncharted emotional territories? The shadows of dusk cloaked his vehicle as he hesitated, pulse racing. If he dared to step forward, would it be a step into potential light or deeper into darkness? With his heart pounding against his chest, he made a choice. He would take action. But as he opened the truck door, an unsettling thought rooted itself in his mind. What if helping Lucy meant facing not just her grief, but his own? The moment he stepped toward her door, he felt the weight of the storm that brewed within, eager to be unleashed. Was he prepared for the tempest? As Tom approached Lucy's door, every step felt like time stretching unbearably. The weight of expectation hung on him. He had something to prove, not only to her, but to himself. His past lived in a shadowed corner of his mind, urging him to reconsider, whispering doubts that felt both familiar and suffocating. Would he ever transcend the negative narratives that had replayed through his life? Before he could lose his nerve, he rapped gently on the door, the sound echoing in the silence. Heart racing, he glanced around, confronting an inner tempest of uncertainty. Would he see the warmth of hope in her eyes, or mistrust born from previous disappointments? The door creaked open slowly, revealing Lucy, eyes wide with surprise. "Tom," she breathed, and with that one word, the walls he'd built around his heart began to crack. "Lucy," he replied, forcing his voice to steady. "I've been thinking about how I can help." Her expression shifted from surprise to guarded anticipation. "You want to help my family?" she asked, skepticism underlying her tone. He took a deep breath, feeling the necessity to be open. "I think we both need something. Maybe this could be a chance for us to heal. I know how to fix things, and I have some tools at my ranch." The flicker of hope in her gaze was almost indiscernible, yet in that moment he recognized a kindred spirit, someone grappling with their own loss. "I can't ask you to do that," she said quietly, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Maybe not," he countered, his frustration twisting into determination. "But I'm offering. I'm tired of sitting in my own space, afraid of making connections. If you'll let me, I want to help you rebuild." Silence enveloped them as Lucy weighed his offer, her vulnerability palpable. He could see the swath of grief that defined her life, much like his, but she was struggling against it, wrestling with shadows day in and day out. And here he was, daring to step into that darkness alongside her. Could it be that they could find strength through vulnerability? That opening his heart, bruised as it was, would not lead to destruction, but growth? "Why?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question pierced through him, leaving him raw. Why did he care? Because I'm tired of being alone, he confessed, his voice stronger now. I've been running from connection, but it's time I stopped. I might not know how to help perfectly, but I want to try. Lucy took a step back, evaluating the sincerity behind his words. You don't even know me. True, but perhaps I can learn, he replied, taking another step forward, willing to embrace the discomfort of this raw moment. We can start where we are, with the barn. Let's just see what happens. I promise not to push you. Let's just work together. The heaviness of the air lightened ever so slightly as Lucy considered his words. Tom felt his heart match the rhythm of something fragile yet hopeful, the prospect of forging an alliance in the face of shared pain beginning to shimmer in the distance. As she hesitated, the faintest hint of a smile appeared on her lips. Okay, she said finally. The word broke like dawn over a dark horizon. But as they began to discuss plans, a distant rumble of thunder echoed from the mountains, an ominous reminder that external storms were never far behind. Suddenly, a gust of wind whipped through the air, and Tom couldn't shake the feeling that the real storm might be brewing within them. Would their shared journey lead to healing, or would old wounds resurface in the presence of fresh ambitions? Determined to forge ahead, he felt the sting of anxiety yet again. Was he really ready to unearth the complexities of their lives, including the secrets he'd buried deep within himself? The path ahead was murky, but with Lucy alongside him, he sensed an intoxicating hint of clarity emerging through the darkness. As night settled deeper, they began outlining their first steps, but with each tick of the clock, Tom felt the gravity of unspoken horrors resting just below the surface. Would confronting those mysteries ultimately lead to redemption or more heartbreak? The morning sun broke through the heavy cloud cover, casting light on the remnants of the previous night's storm. Tom found himself at Lucy's farm, standing before the dilapidated barn, which now symbolized the fragile hope they had begun to cultivate together. The ill-fated structure mirrored his own emotional state, weathered yet standing, desperately in need of care. Armed with determination, Tom picked up a hammer from his toolkit. As he began to examine the deteriorating wooden beams, he felt a flicker of empowerment surge through him. This was his moment to be proactive, to emerge from the shadows of his insecurities and step into a role he had long denied himself. Every nail driven into the wood was not just a physical repair, it was a symbolic act of resilience. Do you think we can save it? Lucy's voice broke through his concentration, skepticism threaded into her tone. Her brown hair glimmered in the sunlight, and despite her lingering doubts, Tom could sense that she, like him, was hungry for a sense of purpose beyond the grief that consumed them. Tom turned to face her, grounding himself in the sincerity of his commitment. I know we can. It'll take time and effort, but we'll rebuild it together. The straightforwardness of his words filled him with a strange confidence, the act of placing faith in not just the barn, but in their ability to effect change, felt liberating. As they worked, they shared stories, gradually knitting their lives together in conversation. Tom revealed snippets of his past, the challenges he faced growing up, and how they shaped him into the man willing to confront his fears. He watched as Lucy began to reciprocate, reminiscing about her life before loss, her laughter almost musical in its rarity. But each story was layered in complexities, reflecting the scars that hadn't healed. Tom could see Lucy catching herself midway through more intimate revelations. Her eyes would flit away, as if fearful of exposing too much. This resonated deeply with him. Even in their shared intention of vulnerability, fear was an undeniable companion. Sometimes I think I'll only disappoint you. Her words hung heavy in the air as they took a break. It was an admission that cut to the core of their development. For a moment, he chided himself for not understanding sooner the weight of inadequacy burdening her spirit. Tom felt an impulse rising within. You can't disappoint me, Lucy, not any more than I've disappointed myself, he confessed. It was raw, almost reckless to admit. But he hoped that by sharing his struggle, it might give her the courage to reconsider hers. Lucy looked away, a frown knitting her brow. But I don't want to rely on you. It feels unfair. Why does it feel unfair to lean on someone? The question broke the rhythm of their conversation, prompting introspection. He recognized the need for her to feel empowered, but resilience also came from mutual support. As they resumed their labor, an uncomfortable silence draped itself over them. That was when Tom stumbled across a rusted metal box, wedged between the barn boards. Curiosity surged in him as he pried it open, revealing forgotten photographs and letters that spoke of happier days long past. It was like opening a portal into lost memories. "Lucy, look at this," he called out, excitement tinged with trepidation. But as she approached, her face shifted from curiosity to alarm. The ghosts of her past were rattling their chains, ready to confront her. He could see her pulse quicken, the muscles in her jaw tense. "Please don't," she started, but his insistence cut her off. "Maybe it's time to confront what's buried. It could bring closure," he encouraged, adrenaline coursing through him. The sight of her internal battle pushed him to confront his own. But as Lucy covered her mouth, tears pooling in her eyes, Tom realized he might have pushed too far. In his eagerness to help, had he overstepped the fragile boundaries of their budding connection? "Lucy," he began, the unease bubbling within him as he watched her retreat into herself, an internal storm brewing in her eyes. The realization hit him hard. This journey wasn't just about building, it was about breaking down the defenses that had kept them both isolated for so long. Could they navigate this tumultuous emotional landscape together? Or would it shatter the trust they had begun to forge? As the air thickened with tension, Tom grappled with the fear of seeing Lucy retreat back behind her walls and the unknown depths of his own emotions that were just beginning to surface. He was in too deep now, holding both their hopes and fears in his hands. And in that moment, he knew that the true test of their development lay ahead, not in repairing the barn, but in confronting the legacies of loss they each carried within. What would emerge when they finally unleashed their buried truths? Tom stood frozen, gazing into the depths of Lucy's turmoil. Her eyes reflected a chaotic mix of fear and longing, a vulnerability laid bare that both thrilled and terrified him. For a moment, he was struck by how silently powerful their shared space had become, a sanctuary of whispered truths that had the potential to either strengthen their bond or shatter it. "Lucy," he took a step closer, softening his voice. "I didn't mean to open old wounds." Each word was deliberate, sculpted from a protective instinct that urged him to reach her. "It's just, this is all part of what we need to do." The tension simmered like the warm afternoon sun bearing down on them. With her hands trembling at her sides, Lucy finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." Tom's heart sank. This had seemed like a pivotal moment, a chance to bridge the gap he felt widening between them. He had expected that confronting the memories they had unearthed would cleanse them. Instead, it felt like it might lead to further isolation. "What if we take it slowly?" he suggested, testing the waters with careful words. "You don't have to share everything right now. Maybe just one memory." His thoughts raced. Could they truly navigate the tumult of old wounds without losing their footing? Lucy hesitated, the muscles in her face shifting as she processed his proposal. Finally, her brows unfurled a bit, and she took a deep breath. "Okay, one memory," she agreed, albeit reluctantly. There was a hint of resolve behind her eyes, a flicker of willingness that gave Tom hope. As she settled onto a nearby hay bale, Tom followed, tightening his grip around the discarded box of photographs. He could feel anticipation mixed with anxiety coiling inside him. Would this unravel her, or would it draw them closer? "I remember my mom used to say that memories were like shadows. They may fade, but they never truly disappear," Lucy began, her voice gaining a steadiness that warmed Tom inside. He watched her as she searched the recesses of her mind, and he marveled at the blend of strength and fragility within her. "What was she like?" Tom prompted, genuinely wanting to know, crafting a safe space for Lucy to explore the contours of her past. "Well," Lucy's brow furrowed slightly as she dug deeper. "She was a dreamer, a bit unrealistic to be honest, but she had this way of making everything feel possible. Even when life was tough, she'd find something to laugh about. It's like she believed joy could chase away the darkness." Tom couldn't help but smile at the image she painted. "It sounds like she was a guiding light in your life." "Yeah," she nodded, the memories lacing her thoughts with warmth. But then her expression shifted again. "But when my dad got sick, her light dimmed." The shadows returned to her eyes, and Tom felt the shift deeply. He instinctively reached out, placing a comforting hand over hers atop the box. "You're not bound to repeat her story, Lucy. You can choose your path." A moment of stillness enveloped them. A sudden vulnerability flooded Tom as he contemplated what it meant to choose, both for himself and for Lucy. Perhaps this was part of healing, the willingness to rewrite their narratives rather than relive the past. When Lucy met his gaze, he saw something more than pain. He saw a spark of recognition, an echo of her earlier resolve beginning to resurface. "Tom, what if we made a pact?" she proposed suddenly, her eyes brightening. "Let's share just one thing about our past every week. No pressure, just a way of confronting our shadows without being overwhelmed." The simplicity of her suggestion was profound. It crafted a framework for discovery that felt safe yet challenging, a step towards resilience they could take together. "Absolutely," he replied, feeling reassured by their shifting dynamic. "Let's keep discovering ourselves alongside each other." But as they spoke, the barn loomed in the background, still damaged and waiting for more than just physical repair. It waited for their stories, their traumas, to be unburdened and acknowledged. Tom's sense of purpose intertwined with his anticipation of the forthcoming week, yet a flicker of anxiety began to surface. Both he and Lucy were still standing on the edge of emotional cliffs. They were navigating treacherous waters far deeper than either of them realized. As they returned to their work on the barn, Tom understood that confronting their shadows would not be a simple task. Would the pact they made transform them, or would it reveal fractures that threatened to break everything they had started to build? It was a choice he had not anticipated, a chance to delve deeper into hidden corners of his own unresolved past. And what of the emotional storms yet to come? The truth hung heavy between them. He knew the journey was just beginning. The following week dawned bright and promising, the sun casting a warm glow over the barn that now seemed less like a forgotten relic and more like a canvas awaiting inspiration. Tom stood outside, contemplating both his growing connection with Lucy and the emotional tempest they were poised to enter. The agreement to share a memory each week loomed in his mind, bringing with it a swirl of anticipation and anxiety. As he stepped inside the barn, the scent of hay mixed with the crispness of freshly painted wood filled his lungs, grounding him in the moment. Today, he was determined to face his own shadows, to strip bare the careful facade he maintained for so long. It was time to confront his past, and he felt a reluctant resolve building within him. Lucy arrived not long after, her demeanor noticeably calmer than before. She seemed more prepared for this exchange. Perhaps the weight of their newfound pact calmed her mind. Tom noticed she had a small box in her hand, similar to his own. "I thought I might bring some pictures too," she said with a shy smile, revealing a hint of eagerness behind her vulnerability. "They might help jog my memory." "Great idea," he replied, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease just slightly. They settled onto the same hay bale they had occupied last week, and for a moment they looked at each other, both aware of the new depth their relationship was carving out. "Since I went first last time, do you want to start?" Tom suggested, realizing he had initially anticipated this moment with equal parts dread and excitement. The prospect of sharing his narrative filled him with fear, yet he yearned for the catharsis it promised. Lucy nodded, fidgeting with the edges of her box. "I think I will," she murmured, then took a deep breath as if to brace herself. "I was always a bit of a misfit when I was younger," she began, her voice steady but laced with the echoes of insecurity. "I felt like I stood out for all the wrong reasons. It got worse when my mom started to struggle after my dad's illness. My friends didn't really understand. I lost a lot of them." Tom's heart sank as he listened to her unfolding narrative, sensing the deep scars of rejection that wound through her memories. He could see how those experiences shaped her, folding into the layers of who she was now. "That must have been really hard," he empathized, and her eyes flickered in recognition. "Yes, but it also made me more introspective, more aware of what it feels like to be on the outside," she continued, her tone shifting slightly. "In a way, it turned me into a dreamer, like my mom." Tom found himself captivated by her reflections, the struggle behind them resonating with his own past brushstrokes of isolation. Empathy bubbled within him, pushing him to confront his own shadows. "When I was in high school, my friends rallied around me, but I felt like a burden," he began, his voice quiet yet resolute. My dad's job loss hit us hard. I tried to keep things smooth, to be the perfect son, but inside, I was terrified everything would fall apart. I didn't want to let anyone see me fail." Lucy's expression softened, the empathy radiating between them like an unspoken promise. He realized that revealing his vulnerability created a channel for something deeper. He wasn't just sharing a memory, he was forging a connection that could wield transformative power. As he pushed further, a knot of remembrance began to unravel. "Sometimes I wonder if I tried too hard to make my family's struggles disappear. I kept fighting to be the hero while inside. I felt lost myself," Tom mused, the weight of his confession settling heavily in the air. Lucy reached out, placing her hand on his. "You didn't fail. You survived." Their touch held an intimacy that seemed to transcend their individual experiences. In that moment, Tom felt something shift within himself, an untapped reservoir of strength flooding to the surface. This sharing, this pact, while daunting, was guiding him toward discovery. Could facing their shadows reshape them both? But an unease simmered beneath his budding confidence. What else lurked in the depths of his past? What hidden traumas might he still be avoiding? As the afternoon light began to wane, casting an amber hue across the barn, Tom understood they were only at the outset. Each revelation seemed to unearth another question, opening doors to the unfathomable complexity of healing. And as he leaned closer to Lucy, he knew the path ahead wouldn't just test their determination. It would redefine who they were. Every moment shared heightened his resolve, yet it also presented the very real possibility of unraveling deeper scars. What was he truly willing to confront? Or perhaps more importantly, what would he find if he did? The deeper they delved into their pasts, the more Tom feared the truth might unveil more than he anticipated. How much of their brokenness could they mend together before their own fractures shattered the bond they were crafting? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, an unsettling thought emerged. Not all histories were waiting to be healed. Some demanded reckoning. And for Tom, the moment of truth was approaching with a relentless urgency. The barn felt charged with a heavy silence as Tom absorbed the weight of his own uncertainties, while Lucy's soothing presence began to dissolve the layers of his apprehension. He shifted slightly on the hay, feeling the roughness beneath him remind him of his childhood, an unhallowed reminder of moments that sparked both warmth and regret. It was a familiar crossroads he knew too well, teetering between disclosure and defense. "Do you ever wish you could have done things differently?" he asked, his voice breaking the hush that enveloped them. Lucy's brow furrowed, and for a moment he worried he'd overstayed his inquiry. But then she nodded, the heaviness of her past lingering in her eyes. "All the time. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd opened up when I lost my friends. I mean, was it really their fault? Or was I the one pushing them away?" Tom recognized that question. It resonated with the echoes of his own childhood traumas. "Isolation is a tricky thing," he replied, leaning in as if a kind of magnetic pull between them spurred his candor. "I hid myself away after my dad's job loss, thinking I was protecting everyone. Maybe I was just afraid of the truth." Her gaze sharpened, the glimmer of understanding shining through the mist of her own guilt. "What truth?" "The truth that we weren't okay and I couldn't save us." His voice trembled slightly, but there was a burgeoning resolve beneath it, rekindled by his willingness to face his fears. "I thought if I could be strong enough, everything would just go back to normal." He sensed Lucy's empathy as she contemplated his revelation. It struck him that their confessions were peeling back years of their guarded histories, and instead of grief, he could feel a tentative sense of power rising within him. "I'm learning that normal is just a collection of moments stitched together," Lucy mused, allowing her own vulnerabilities to weave into the fabric of their shared experience. "Maybe accepting the past is what truly sets us free." Her words ignited a flame within Tom. He felt a catalytic shift. Perhaps confronting his past didn't mean condemning it, but rather embracing it as a part of his journey. The ghosts he thought would haunt him forever could instead transform into teaching moments, illuminating pathways to resilience. "I've been fighting with the idea of failure for so long," he confessed, his spirit lifting with the acknowledgement. "It feels like I've been too afraid to move forward, always stuck in the what-ifs. But today, I don't know, it feels different." Lucy's sincerity drew them closer, and he could sense a palpable connection, a crucible where raw truths mingled and forged something new. They were not merely victims of their stories anymore. They were protagonists in their own narratives, redeeming lost time through shared understanding. But beneath this newfound camaraderie lay an unsettling truth. As the exchange intensified, a fear whispered to him that confronting these histories could resurrect long-buried pain. What if facing the past didn't just reveal his scars, but also the parts of him he thought he had buried for good? This worry pulsed through him, morphing into a pressing need for safety. "Do you think sharing these memories will make things easier or harder for us?" he questioned, vulnerability flooding his voice. "What if the more we uncover, the more damage is done?" A flash of uncertainty crossed Lucy's face, and Tom felt an instant wave of regret for voicing the question. Would this exchange be worth the unraveling? Would probing the darkness yield the light they desired, or would it leave them more shattered than ever? As the twilight deepened, shadows danced against the barn walls, echoing the turmoil of his thoughts. Each revelation brought them closer, but it also deepened the chasm of fear looming ahead. What other memories remained unshared? What truths could twist their connection if not handled with care? With a hurried glance at Lucy, who was battling her own thoughts, he wondered if this journey had equipped them for greater vulnerability, or opened a Pandora's box neither anticipated. In that fleeting moment of shared silence, Tom sensed the necessity of a brave step forward. They weren't just digging into their shadows, they were edging closer to an abyss that could either shatter their bond or fuse them uniquely against their pasts. And so, in a split-second decision, he made a choice. "I think it's time for me to be honest about one more thing from my childhood," he declared, determination blazing in his chest. Lucy looked at him, her gaze steadying him as the air thickened with anticipation. But the question loomed. What skeleton from his past was he about to unveil? As he prepared to delve deeper, he couldn't shake the looming uncertainty. Could this revelation push them further apart? Or would it wind them tighter together into something unbreakable? Tom's heart raced as he grappled with the gravity of his impending confession. The barn's rustic atmosphere, once a sanctuary, now felt like a pressure cooker poised to release its steam at any moment. Lucy's eyes held a steady flame of curiosity and concern, urging him to proceed, yet a nagging doubt clawed at his resolve. He took a deep breath, the musty scent of hay filling his lungs while lingering memories flooded his mind. "When I was 9, he began, his voice wavering at the edges, "my family lost everything. My dad's job was gone in an instant, and the shame consumed him." He paused, the ache of nostalgia weighing down his thoughts. He was a proud man, and watching him struggle was unbearable. "I thought I had to step up, be the cornerstone of our family." The corners of Lucy's mouth tugged downward, the recognition of shared struggle etched upon her face. "You were just a kid," she interjected softly, encouraging him without impatience. "A kid who thought being strong meant shutting everyone out," he replied, pushing forward as the words began to spill like a dam long held back. "I took it upon myself to be the man of the house. I tried to make him smile, to be the light, but in doing so, I ignored my own pain and shut down my feelings completely." The memories surged forth, vivid and haunting. "By the time they finally lost the house, I was an emotional ghost. I didn't cry or complain. I just existed. And yet, it felt like I was the one who had failed. I couldn't save my family." Swimming in an ocean of vulnerability, Tom locked eyes with Lucy, where he saw a reflection of his own struggles. "I carried that shame with me for years," he admitted. "It twisted into a belief that if you show weakness, you're not worthy of love or support. I learned to take what was thrown at me and just keep going." Lucy shifted closer, her expression a mixture of compassion and understanding. "But you're not that boy anymore," she urged gently. "You've grown. What happened back then shaped you, yes, but it doesn't define you." Tom felt the warmth of her words melt the icy cage around his heart. "I'm starting to see that," he confessed, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. "But it's terrifying. What if this light I'm finding leads back to darkness I couldn't bear to face? What if I discover that I'm still just that scared boy?" Her response was immediate, unwavering. "Then you face it together. That's the courage we're finding in each other. It's about connection, not isolation." Her reassurance filled him with a strength he hadn't anticipated. It was as if Lucy was illuminating the shadows he had wandered through alone for far too long. "Maybe I need to stop running from my memories," he said contemplatively. "Maybe they're not just burdens, but lessons that can help me navigate my future." As if the air had changed, he instinctively reached for her hand, the gesture unexpected in its tenderness. The simple act spoke volumes, an acknowledgement of their shared pain and the nascent bond forming between them. But just then, a fragment of doubt crept back into his mind. What if this doesn't save me from my past? What if I open up just to find I'm too broken to change? The fear reverberated within him, a cold reminder of the fragility of his resolve. Lucy squeezed his hand, a small act packed with authority. "Breaking is part of the process," she countered. "You're not too broken, Tom. You're just on the brink of understanding your worth. Together, we can draw from our experiences rather than be crushed by them." That revelation felt like a doorway swinging open, and he dared to envision the possibilities on the other side. "What if we can share our truths and build something out of the ashes?" he pondered, excitement intertwining with trepidation. As they sat together, their joined hands symbolized more than support. It was a commitment to face the unknown, the anger, sadness, and regret that could surface in surprising ways. Tom realized that he had taken a monumental step toward reclaiming his agency. Now whatever lay ahead would require not just honesty, but action. And as they gazed into each other's eyes, a question lingered in the stillness. What new truths must we confront next? The growing realization of shared discovery settled around them, amplifying the uncertainty, but also promising liberation. Tom let go of Lucy's hand, the warmth of her clasp fading just as new complexities stirred within him. They sat in silence, the dusty barn around them seemingly holding its breath as the weight of their shared vulnerability hung in the air. He knew that the path ahead would not only stretch their burgeoning connection, but it would also test the limits of his self-imposed boundaries. He breathed deeply, grappling with the internal shift. A flame ignited within him, not from the fear of revisiting his past, but from the sense that confronting those memories could potentially unlock something profound. What if embracing that darkness could lead to rediscovering the light within himself? As if anticipating his thoughts, Lucy ventured, "What's holding you back? You mentioned lessons. Maybe it's time to start sorting through the rubble together." She was right. Confronting his past wasn't just about revisiting pain, but rather about gleaning insights he hadn't been ready to confront. He had harbored guilt for decades, but shame wasn't his only companion in this journey. There were lessons buried beneath the shame, resilience, empathy, and ultimately a powerful drive for connection. Tom shifted in his seat, the barn's creaking wood echoing the unrest within him. "I guess I've always believed that addressing the past would mean reliving the hurt," he admitted, the disbelief in his own voice startling. "But maybe there's strength in exposing it to light." Lucy nodded. "Exactly. Each memory has shaped us, but understanding them doesn't mean we're destined to be enslaved by them." A flicker of determination coursed through Tom, and he realized that avoiding those painful memories might have kept him safe, but it also stunted his growth. What if I wrote my story? Not just the sorrowful parts, but the moments that sparked hope too, the times that forged my resilience? Lucy's eyes brightened, enthusiasm lighting her features. "That's an empowering idea. Writing can be cathartic. It's a way to process and share your journey, but also it could inspire others who've experienced similar struggles." He felt excitement mingling with his anxiety. Writing had always been a desire lodged deep within him, something he had denied in favor of more practical pursuits. What if this was the time to unlock that piece of himself? "Maybe I can start small," he mused, "just jotting down memories and feelings. I've avoided vulnerability for so long. Perhaps it's finally time to embrace it. Let's take it one step at a time. No pressure to put it all out there immediately," she reassured. "You can write for yourself first. It's your story after all." That was true. It was his story. Tom began to envision not just the unburdening of his soul, but the possibility of sharing his experience, authentic and raw. He found solace in that thought. It was daunting, yet liberating, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of agency over his narrative. However, a difficult truth lingered beneath that sense of excitement. What if writing his story exposed flaws he still wished to hide? The fear of judgment hovered like a specter, reminding him of his past. Would opening up further isolate him, or foster the very connection he craved? "Remember," Lucy interjected, sensing his turmoil, "the process is transformative. Use this opportunity to explore who you are now, not just who you were." He nodded, slowly gaining clarity about the evolution he desired. Each word written could act as a bridge to the present, leading him away from the shadows of guilt that had overshadowed his life. But as he leaned into this burgeoning ambition, he felt a shiver of uncertainty. With Lucy's encouragement echoing in his mind, he internally grappled with the stakes, confronting wounds that could risk further exposure, yet also pave the way for healing. As they left the barn, the sky stretched broad and open above them, a metaphor for the journey ahead. But with every step he took, another question nagged at him. What hidden truths lay waiting to be uncovered through his writing, and would they ultimately empower or cripple him? Days turned into weeks, and the rhythms of life swirled around them as Tom's resolve began to crystallize into concrete actions. The sunlight streamed through the barn doors, illuminating the space where he and Lucy had confronted their shadows. Their journey was no longer solely about rebuilding the barn. It was about reconstructing their lives. Empowered by vulnerability, Tom found himself in a position of renewed purpose. He picked up his pen to write about not just his past, but his evolving identity. As he sat at his kitchen table, fingers poised over paper, the memories washed over him like waves. Some days were filled with the aching loss of his youth, but countless moments of resilience surfaced too. With each sentence penned, something remarkable transpired. The shame began to dissolve into clarity. The realization that he had strength, compassion, and a story worth sharing enveloped him in peace. Lucy's unwavering support bolstered him. Whenever the daunting weight of his writing threatened to extinguish his newfound flame of ambition, she was there, her laughter ringing like music, reminding him that vulnerability connected them as much as it challenged them. "What are you learning about yourself?" she'd tease, her tone light yet laden with sincerity, heightening his resolve. Tom would smile, responding with genuine enthusiasm. "I'm learning that my past isn't a chain binding me. It's a sphere of experiences that shape who I am today." Their partnership deepened, with shared memories igniting discussions. Lucy would share tales of her mother's laughter amidst hardship, and in those moments, Tom witnessed a woman reconciling grief with growth. Each story fostered a rich tapestry of connection, painted with hues of sadness, but threaded with resilience. The breakthrough came when Tom decided to share a chapter of his writing with Lucy. The warmth of the afternoon sun poured through her kitchen window, casting a glow on the pages where he unveiled the tender and tumultuous tales of his childhood. As she read, Lucy's expression shifted through a spectrum of emotions: surprise, empathy, pride. "No one could have carried the weight you did alone," she said quietly when she finished. "But here you are, finding your voice. That's incredible." His heart soared at her acknowledgement. It was a validation he never expected to find. He had conquered his fears, not by burying them, but by holding them up to the light, revealing their contours for what they truly were: lessons in resilience and self-acceptance. With each chapter he wrote, each unguarded reflection he shared, they both became more entrenched in a narrative of hope. Lucy, too, began uncovering her hidden joys alongside her heartaches, sharing them with Tom and allowing herself to rise from the depths of her own grief. As months rolled into a collective momentum, Tom found himself celebrating tangible achievements. His writing evolved into a cohesive manuscript, reflecting not only his own journey, but the intertwined paths still ahead of him and Lucy. Their efforts to restore the barn blossomed into a budding farm endeavor, reminiscent of deep-rooted traditions, but now bursting with the vibrancy of community spirit. Then came a pivotal moment. Tom received an invitation to share his journey at a local gathering. The anxiety briefly clawed at him, the fear of judgment lingered, echoing memories of his past failures. But Lucy's abiding faith in him anchored him as he steadied himself. They prepared together, turning their shared anxieties into triumphs, matching their thoughts and bolstering each other's confidence. The night of the gathering arrived, and as Tom stood before an attentive audience, the flashlight illuminating his path forward, he realized the truth. He had transformed. He was no longer a fearful boy stumbling through shadows. He was a man skilled in the art of storytelling, someone who could articulate the complexities of pain, empathy, and redemption. "Sharing my story is not a sign of weakness but of strength," he proclaimed, his voice clear and resolute. The audience nodded, enraptured. Those words resonated, reverberating off walls that echoed vulnerability and resilience in equal measure. There, beneath the beaming lights, surrounded by familiar faces and the warmth of the community he once feared, Tom felt a profound sense of belonging, something he had longed for and now exuberantly claimed. Later, amidst the loving discussions that echoed into the night, he looked toward Lucy's encouraging gaze, remembering the women she had guided herself to become as well. They had journeyed through darkness and emerged not only whole but transformed. In achieving closure through connection, healing, and self-love, they solidified their bond, carving out a new legacy that intertwined hope and ambition. Hand in hand, they faced an open road lined with endless possibilities and shared dreams. As the sky above settled into night, cascading stars shone brightly above, a fitting reminder that they were no longer shrouded in darkness, but glowing with the light of their shared experience and victories. It was time to step forward into the future, prepared to embrace every chapter, every opportunity, and every joy that lay ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.